Hi, Brandon.
Hi there.
Hi. Welcome to Chosen Family.
Super happy to be here, man.
It's like Celine Con. How do you call those? Like Comic Con? Celine
Yeah.
Con?
But I mean, like Comic Con's here and Celine Con.
Yeah.
Well, Celine Con is all year round. It's 365 days a year. It's going on 40 years now of her career.
Because Quebec is the epicenter of it's Celine land, really.
It is.
So so just to establish your brand.
Yeah.
Because your brand is like you're the quirky Anglo who's into French culture, writes for the Gazette. So you're sort of an interpreter for the Gazette for like mainstream Quebec.
Yeah, I often say that like I write a lot about Francophone culture in the English media. I'm also in the Francophone media, sort of giving an Anglo presence.
We met on Radio Canada.
Absolutely.
So that's like
Christian Charette.
we like to be on the...
We're on the fence.
Cusp,
We're on the fence or something. But what I often say about the stuff I write in the Gazette is I write about stuff like Francophone culture that my readers don't consume. So I write about artists and films that they don't see, but honestly, they kind of like, they want me to interpret it for them because my thing is like, if you haven't seen these movies, you don't know who Safia Nolin is.
Yeah.
But then you read my column and then you're at a party and someone says, oh, Safia Nolin, she's so cool. And you say, yeah, she's super cool. Yeah, I love that album of hers, you know, because you've read my column. So.
Right. Do you remember the first time that you became aware of Celine or the first time that you met her?
Well, you know what? It's interesting. The first time I met her, so I go not way back to when she was 12, but when she was launching her first English album, Unison.
It's so good. I think it's her best record.
Celine album that's good.
It's fantastic. You know, it's like the first Clash album or something. It's got that raw, visceral feel to
Probably
it.
pushing it a little bit, Brendan.
I love you, Brendan.
Yes, just a little. So anyways, I met her, and I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, the spring of 1990, and I met her up at the offices of Sony Music at the time. It was like in Industrialville, Saint Laurent.
You were starting out also.
I was, you know, the funny thing is I'm just a couple of years older than Celine, so we were roughly the same age, and she was this, but from, you know, very different worlds, and here was this young woman, I mean, say she probably was like, what was she then,
like
20 or something like that?
21, yeah.
21. She couldn't speak English at all, you know. So it was very funny because I always remember Renee, of course, insisted that the interview be in English because I could have done it in French, but he wanted her to like jump into the whole English thing. And so she gave me this, you know, I've got a very good team behind me and all this, you know, and I knew like it was a speech.
Right.
And I knew that if I asked her, hey, Celine, just a sec. What did you think of that Habs game last night? She would just collapse. Like the whole charade would fall apart. But, you know, so she didn't. Now, of course, she really does speak perfect English. I mean, she's lived.
She does speak perfect English, but she doesn't really say anything.
Oh, come on, Tranna.
But wait, let me give you an
Come
example.
on.
I'm going to give you an example that you're directly
you don't like
related
Celine?
to.
You were the receiving end of this.
Because you just mentioned, you know, you got the impression that this was very much a speech and that if you asked her something off the cuff, she would just, you know, kind of freeze. But in a way, she's still kind of like that. So you were at the launch of her handbag line at Brown's.
I was.
And you were the only journalist there that was actually trying to get something real out of her. And every time you tried to ask her something about where she's at in her life right now, post Renee, she would try to deflect. So she just starts singing Rihanna, Diamonds, and then she also, to deflect one of your questions, kind of started picking on you for your English accent.
She did.
That became kind of a viral thing.
And that's on YouTube, and everyone can watch that. And it's awkward and kind of like hard to watch.
No?
It was the first time that I felt that I've ever seen her be kind of cruel. Did you feel that it was?
It was a very weird thing. And so
tell us about that
well,
moment.
okay,
Tell
so
us the
here,
story.
so she's launching her handbags. Who friggin' cares, right? It's just Celine. No, but seriously, you're going because it's Celine. So I show up at Brown's, and only who launches something at Brown's?
Brown's is it's not the
it's
greatest
ridiculous.
store. Yeah.
It's just ridiculous, and it's this little place, and so but everyone's there. There's like 50 journalists, and I'm talking to all my friends, and they're like, "Oh, you know, there's this story about this Spanish dancer, but we don't want to ask her about it." And I'm like, I'll ask her.
I'll
I
ask
don't
her,
care.
yeah.
You know, whatever. I mean, people
That's
want
her
to know,
job.
right?
Yeah.
Her job is to sing. Your job is to ask questions.
Right.
Yeah.
And I started the question in French, and as you say, she started making fun of my French accent, and it's like the funny thing is, like, we really know each other. I mean,
Right.
we've known each other, as we were saying, for like 27 years, and so she starts, and I didn't get mad. Some people like CJD called me, this is an outrage, human rights violation. I don't care. No, I'm joking, but I mean, they were like, a lot of Anglos get upset.
Right.
I don't get upset because honestly, I have a big accent in French. You know that we work together on Radio Canada, but I work in French and whatever, I have an accent.
Yeah.
Some guy from Latin America has an accent, some whatever.
Right.
But so I was just laughing at this, but then we got into this whole thing and I said, you're being mean to me.
Yes.
And then that's when she said, and this is like, and I mean, this video, like, it was pretty amazing, really. I'm
Yeah.
not saying I was amazing. It was just an amazing moment because I said, you're being mean to me. And she said, I'm only mean to people I love.
Yeah.
And I said, I love you too. And it was like this, this moment. And then it went on. And you're right, though. Your analysis is interesting because she then started singing. She started singing Diamonds, the Rihanna song, like out of like,
And
what?
then like Don Henley.
No,
Free
Tom Petty.
Tom Petty, sorry.
But like, what was that? Like, what was free? Like, neither of the songs had anything.
Had he died when she sang that? Was it like the way he died?
I don't know.
You don't
But
know.
I mean,
know.
these are
It was
clearly
weird.
the
It was
songs that
totally
are playing in
bizarre.
her head.
was
But don't you find
totally-
that she's
There's also
mean-
like doctor. No, or is that a different? No, that was the back.
But she was singing throughout the day. And I mean, one of the things is, so it was really weird. And the video traveled the world. It was in Rolling Stone, the
Right.
New York Daily News, Elle France. I mean, literally, like it was one of the biggest videos on the Gazette Facebook that year. And it was like, there was something like crazy about this whole thing. And one of the things is it was her being super wacky. You realize, like, a few of my friends saw it and they said that is like seriously the weirdest thing that I've ever
And
seen.
she's done a lot of weird things.
And she's done a lot of weird things.
Like Popeye is Up, the clip from Good Morning America last year was like,
Well, and famously, of course,
kayak.
They take a kayak. And it's interesting because we're doing this thing in the Gazette, the 30 days of Celine Dion, where we celebrate.
When you say we, do you mean you or you're a team of people?
We actually have a whole team. There's hundreds of people working on this project. No, in fact, I have to say myself and my colleague David Rudin, who's in the interactive team. So we were given it's actually not my idea. They came and said, "Let's do this thing," and I am kind of the Celine Dion point person. Yeah. And they said, so we do a little thing every day. You can find it on the Gazette website where you do the we're now, I think, at today's day 20. So we've done a little item every day about Celine Dion. We're going to have a big feature on the weekend about which I wrote about the meaning of Celine Dion. So I can't reveal what she means, but I mean, it's deep. It's very deep.
Can't wait to read it.
I mean, Celine does sort of encompass so many different ideas about culture and relationships, and there is a lot of depth there. I don't feel like the depth comes from her, but she opens up the conversation. And what I kind of find ironic about her is that she's someone who in many ways doesn't seem to have a guard. She just shares everything so openly. It's just like a
100%.
floodgate.
I mean, it's
when she used to
incredible.
go on and on about her infertility and like the miscarriages and everything, it was like, whoa.
No,
But then at the same time, though, there are these moments, I don't know how conscious it is on her part, but where she's really withholding and doesn't really say anything real. And I don't know, I kind of feel personally, looking at everything that is Celine, that there is a part of her that isn't really real. She's been doing this since she was 10 years old.
But that's her reality. I mean, that's the thing is she, you know what? Like a good comparison is Michael Jackson. I mean, in terms of the kind of life she had.
Right.
So she's been in this bizarre life since forever, really. Like even from when she was born, but even especially from when she met Renee and was being molded into a pop star when she was like 12, 13 years old. But you're right. I always remember I was in Las Vegas when they had that memorial ceremony for Renee a couple of months or a month after he died. So the Gazette sent me there and I'm watching this ceremony. So they've had the funeral here and all that, the more traditional thing. So this is for the people in the show business milieu. Remember the hand?
Yes.
They have the
Who could
hand,
forget the
this
hand?
molded hand.
This molded hand plated in gold.
It's psychotronic.
My theory is that she actually cut off his hand when he died
Right.
and had that dipped in gold. I think it's the real hand.
Oh my God.
And so anyway, so she gets up and I'm like, oh my God, she's on stage. I'm been sent to Vegas. I literally have got 2 tape recorders going. I got my notes. So Celine is going to speak because she didn't speak at the funeral.
Right.
Right. So that she gets up and she's just off the friggin'
Rails.
charts.
Yeah.
She says, I was sitting there with Renee and
She's
we
kind
used
of
to watch the.
She's kind of Trumpian.
Yeah,
in her attention
it's
span.
very
and
stream of consciousness. And she's like, I was watching we would watch The Price is Right. Who watches The Price is Right? Of course, Celine and Renee are watching The Price is Right. And she says, we watch. And, and she says, they're showing the kitchen. And she says, I know what everything costs because I buy everything. And then she says, and then the woman wins the whole thing. And she says, Renee's weeping. Then she's saying, I don't read books. I don't listen to. I'm like, it's a memorial ceremony, like a little,
what?
like where
Where are you coming from?
So do you
like,
think she's confused? Because that's the impression we get sometimes recently in the last couple of years when we've seen her. It's like there's this really joyful side of her where when she was here for a month, let's say in 2016, she was performing at the Bell Center for like 10 or 12 nights. Right. She seemed happy doing this. But then I saw that show 3 times, which was also a like theatrical repetition. Every time was the same thing, the same breaks, the same. So there's a part of her where like, how spontaneous is it and how confused is she watching her?
Well,
in
you know
this
what? I
spectacle?
think, I mean, the thing with Celine, and I remember that those shows, I went to the premiere of that, to cover it for the paper, and she was just weeping, right? She got on, and she cries easily, obviously. She got on stage
But she
weeping.
did that every night. That's
Really,
the crazy thing. Is like there was this one part where she would stop.
But it's not an act, right? Or is it? I mean, maybe
I don't know.
That's
I
the
think
mystery.
she's
That is.
that's the le mystère de Celine.
Well, because she's so well trained, and I feel like.
But you have to give her some agency.
No, but
I don't know. Honestly, I don't really give her much agency at all. Like when I look at people like Madonna and Barbara, they had agency. There was a drive that came from them. Celine had a dream, but did she have drive? I don't. I
think she is like kind of an athlete. I think she's like sort of driven the way an athlete is driven to like always just to the next goal. And she just looks to the next thing. And then when she looks back, she's like, oh my God, I did all of these things. But she's really just focused on the next thing.
But I think it's all so rehearsed and like overproduced.
No, but yes and no, though, because the thing about Celine, I mean, like I spent like a long time, like 25 years interviewing entertainers. It's not fair to say mostly they're pain and whatever, but there's a large number of these people who are so full of crap. It's unbelievable, right? So why are you coming back to tour? Oh, I'm concerned about the rainfall. No, come on. You want money.
Right.
So with Celine though, I honestly believe that whatever comes out of her mouth is the absolute truth. It's crazy and it just comes flying out. Remember when she was here in 2016, and I'd interviewed her before, but she kept talking about that. She rented this house in Belle.
Yeah, and she said, loving to walk on the
frogs
grass.
and the fish and she said, and René Charles caught this fish. She's like, it was like hilarious. It was kind of crazy, but it was not an act. And the thing with her, which is amazing now too, so look, René is dead. Right? Apparently. No, sorry, he is dead. He from before he dies, he sets up this thing with Aldo Giampaolo, his old friend, who's been working with them for 20 years. To sort of stage man. That's why I'm sort of the thing about René is dead is because René was kind of like almost from beyond the grave. He's trying to still.
Well, there are a few things. I read that he produced the funerals.
Yes, I think that's a true story.
So
he was stage managing this whole thing. That's what I'm saying when I'm sort of chuckling about him. Of course he's dead.
And
but
she recorded The Show Must Go On before he died, and they released it after, which to me was so staged and so weird, like the Queen cover.
But then the thing is though, is within months or a year, her and Aldo part company. We don't know why.
Right.
Nothing is said, but it sort of seems like he moved to Vegas. I mean, he took his family and he moved to Las Vegas. He was at a big job here with the Cirque du Soleil. Or no, he was with Québécois just before that. So he goes and he would have and Aldo's a great guy. He's super, really brilliant guy. But he would very much, I mean, I talked to him. He was going to go in the same direction as René. And then they part company. Apparently she has no manager. She's just there with,
Self-managing,
like you send an email.
She's self-managed.
No,
And
she's out. She.
I think some artists do that, but I think like Beyonce doesn't have a manager. She has her company.
I know, but
that's
I mean,
handling
Beyonce,
all the business.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Maybe
And she
it's-
can
But
maybe talk
I read
to
also she's
Jay-Z.
asking RC for a lot of advice. So I'm really curious about RC because
Oh
we've
my
seen the
God.
kid, we've seen him grow up.
Yeah.
Like at some point he was struggling with like speech impediment or speaking French or English. It wasn't clear, and then it turns out that he's just this like dude.
Right, but it's interesting the way he talks though,
Yeah.
because he's only ever lived in the States. He's never
Yeah.
lived here, I don't
Nope.
think.
Yeah.
But they speak French at home.
Right.
Which
and
is
the whole
super
team
interesting.
is French.
Yeah, which is
Everybody
great.
There's like
Yeah.
this little, it's like mini Quebec.
So they
over
live
there.
in French in Vegas, in this like Tony suburb of Vegas. So when he speaks French, you're like, where's this guy from?
Right.
When he speaks English, you're like, where's this guy
Yeah.
from? Anyway, so like, you know what? Maybe with him, he plays hockey, obviously.
Yeah, he's just
so
a bro.
like to me,
RC
the dream scenario
And
is
with-
them buying the Habs. And
Oh,
she puts
really?
RC as president.
Right.
Oh
No?
my-
Isn't that
I mean, I
brilliant?
couldn't care
No.
less.
No, I know. I would,
But I could see that
would
happening.
you know what? my head would just explode.
Yeah.
Right.
My
I
twin
could-
obsessions.
Yeah.
you know?
I could see that happening.
So Brendan, just back to you. So you got
It's
to
all about
Montreal
me.
in the summer of '67.
Correct.
And my theory is that because Celine was born in March '68, my theory is that, and she was an accident. We know that from
Yes,
Adibab
yeah, there were
and
10, like it was
Thérèse.
like 10 years between
yeah.
or something. Between
And they've
the
already
last
had
kid.
like 13 kids, and she was the 14th. My theory is that they visited Expo '67, and they were like, "The world, we want the world, we want," and this like ambition led to like a torrid night, and they just made Celine.
I love it.
and that happened. But you got here that same summer, and
I may have like sort of
Crossed
I might have crossed paths with Monsieur et Madame Dion that day.
and here at Expo '67.
But isn't that kind of perfect though, in a way? Like, okay, so your theory is they go to Expo, where Expo is, we are the center of the world.
Yeah.
Montreal, this is the center of the world. Montreal's at its absolute peak. They have torrid relations that night, and out pops Celine 9 months later. And I arrive from Scotland,
Yeah.
this odd Scottish Irish
kind of a
family.
romantic comedy? Like
Yeah,
platonic
and then I
romantic
become
comedy.
like that. Like I become, a noted Celineologist years
Yeah.
later. Like that, this was always
Meant to be.
Meant to be. No,
Yeah.
it's actually kind of scary, and also because I always had this theory that I arrived at. I mean, it was the peak of Montreal, and frankly,
Mm-hmm.
I love Montreal. I totally don't want to live anywhere else. But we kind of been on a decline since 1967.
which I
in
love.
so many-
We're cool.
Yeah, the
we don't
decline
need,
of
we
who
don't need
needs
the
success. Who needs
peak.
success?
We don't, no, but we don't need
overrated.
Toronto money. We just
But you know
don't
what?
need it.
Listen, just
It's
as a
fine.
sidebar, is
Yeah.
like, look, Montreal's friggin' great. Why is it great? It's great because we're on a decline.
Yeah.
Why do all these bands move here? Why do all these musicians come from all
Yeah.
over North
But
America?
is it still
Because
true,
it's cheap.
Brendan? You know that.
It's true. It's
Is it
totally
still true
You know this
in
band Ott?
2018?
You know this
Yeah.
band
Oh,
Ott?
yeah, you're right.
So
Yeah,
these guys
recent
are like
bands.
23 and they
Yeah,
all
okay.
came to McGill and Concordia and they're like, hey, it's cheap. Rehearsal space is cheap. Rents are cheap. They're in Mile X
Yeah, I know.
or whatever.
I know the
and it's
story.
cool, right?
I know the story, but that was like 15 years ago.
No, it's totally
the
still
case?
happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, but
I
the other
believe you.
reason people come is because of Celine, obviously.
Right.
I mean, it's like a magnet for the
Wow.
whole world.
My other theory about the Montreal, because we're trying to make all these generalizations about the Montreal music scene, and it's quite fun.
Sure.
So my generalization between Leonard Cohen, Celine, Arcade Fire
Yeah.
is God. There's just this.
They are God.
They are God. There is just this deep, deep spirituality in their music and in their brand that's like kind of.
There's a deep spirituality in Celine's music.
Of course. Love and you know that
But
we've
it's-
talked about that. It's like all
it's the
Christian
pa-
songs.
Well, I feel like that's what the aspiration is with these songs, but it's not really there. The song,
No,
Celine
not for
songs are
us,
so
but for
vacuous.
but for the fans, it's
For the
there.
But
You know
I'm
what?
concerned about those people. Like, I'm worried for the people who
Okay.
listen to Celine
Okay.
and feel something real. That is
So-
that's
so
a
for-
cry for help.
So for the longest time, so I was in early on this whole Celine thing in the English
Yeah,
years,
totally.
and I was like, so those early years, and they put out a press release, she's done this, she's making, and I'm like, I read all the magazines, and I read People, and I read Rolling Stone, and I'm like, no one's talking about Celine back in the '90s, and I thought, I had this theory for years that success was just invented, that it was Renee had, there was a big warehouse in New Jersey.
In Laval.
And he was,
In
or
Laval.
in Laval maybe,
In
and
Laval.
they just bought all these records and they put them in this thing, and
Oh
so
my
it got
God,
to the
that's
top of
a
the
really
charts,
good
and it
theory.
never actually really happened. Because I remember,
That's a good theory.
because I remember when
Until
I met,
the Olympics, because that was kind of, she was in the stadium singing.
right, and she eventually but seriously, for years and years, I never met anyone who had a Celine Dion record.
Right.
So I thought, well, do you? And now I know
it's
people.
true. Like when
but-
you look at Unison, the numbers,
one
like
had-
looking
no one-
back,
no
like
one
it
bought
wasn't
that album.
that big, but yeah, there are these like sales numbers that are there. But it's a
But
really
then
interesting theory.
And you know, and the other thing too, okay. So just to be absolutely clear, I love Celine. So I'm on the opposite end to Tranna, but I don't like her music really. I mean, I like
Right,
some of the
same,
French,
same,
right?
same, exactly, some of
Like
the
Deux
French.
is a great album.
There, and
obviously,
even
Toi is good too, and Cat.
No, but the one after with
Del.
Suffisait d'aimer. No, not Del. Del, I'm not.
No, that's a
into.
bit rough.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you know, but I've always said, so I don't really like her music, but I like her. But there's some really like that kind of music that she did in the 90s, which is how she became famous. I mean, whatever that song is called that's in Titanic, My Heart Will Always Go On and On and On. I mean, it's honestly, it's not a good song.
no,
it's really
and she
not,
knew it too.
Yeah.
You know,
I doubt it. I mean, does she?
Yeah, she didn't want to record it.
So you know what she needs to do, though? This has been my theory for
Yeah,
years.
let's A&R Celine right here.
Yeah, exactly. You know what she could do? And I really believe if I could get to her, and look how hard it was. I was trying to talk to her and I couldn't get through to her.
Yeah.
If I could sit down and have a
Yes.
cup of tea with her, you know, and say, listen, what you should do, and you heard it here first, I may just throw the microphone off the table when I say that, is Dion sings Costello. Elvis Costello writes a whole album for her.
I'm here for that.
No,
I'm here for that,
I'm telling you
Brendan.
right now. I've talked to Elvis Costello. Elvis Costello first would be a big paycheck,
Yeah.
but he would friggin' love to do this,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
To write songs tailor made for Celine Dion,
an
and it would be
amazing
the
songwriter.
greatest thing.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
No,
Wow.
but
That would be-
Celine-
I don't know if
Celine-
she would ever
so
do it.
Cool.
if
Shivers.
Celine knew how to get on the internet, I would make a direct
Celine-
plea
That's
to her here.
The funny thing is,
But Celine always plays
She-
it safe.
I think she's listening to her Walkman right now.
yeah.
She once
Her
told me
Unison
that.
cassette.
So
Her
watching
8-track.
watching Celine for so long, I have a sense sometimes. It's a bit cynical, but I have a sense that Celine and Renee, they've been faithful to Quebec, but they've also used Quebec as their personal ATM. Like I felt that like 10 nights at the Bell Center in 2016. Yes, the demand was there, but I think I read somewhere that they netted, like she netted 10 or 20 mil. I'm not exactly sure, but like
It's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Like,
I mean, the
that's
demand is there. She's been, it's going to be 15 years in Vegas. Like, do you think that takes something away from the whole operation, knowing that like?
But what is there to
she
take away
loves
from? The
money.
operation is commercial. It was from the
Operation,
beginning. That was
right.
the only goal. They were on a mission.
No, the goal is love. The
No,
goal is
Celine's goal.
music.
Celine was I love singing.
Yeah.
That's the difference between. For me, that's the difference. To get back to what we were talking about earlier, that's the difference between a Celine versus a Barbara and a Madonna. It's because Madonna and Barbara had things they wanted to say. A lot of these women have things that they wanted to say. Celine was, I love singing. Celine just wanted
That's
to
something.
sing. And that's
That's
fine.
something.
I'm not saying it from a
I
point
love-
of judgment.
I love love.
Like, I love to sing. And Renee was, I love money. I love
Right.
gambling.
Yeah.
I
And
love
those
gambling.
two
I
things
need mo-
together.
I need money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there was
feed.
never, like, Celine never had any artistic impulse. Celine, it was, I love to sing. This is my hobby.
Well,
You
I mean,
know?
it's like
It's not like I have an
I don't think
artistic
it's a hobby.
vision.
I think she was born
I think
to do
she's got
this.
it's now kind of a full-time job, but I mean,
Yeah,
it's
no,
like
but I mean, she doesn't have an artistic vision. She's not trying to say something artistically.
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of with Thomas. I mean, do you not believe in love?
I do, but I believe in a more complicated
So-
love
I know.
than Celine puts out there.
On the topic of love, I want to end on sexuality because I think it's
right.
the
Oh my God, okay.
it's
Can
the
I share my theory?
It's the elephant in the room
Yes.
with her.
Okay, let me share my theory.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that Celine is a virgin.
Okay.
I
Okay.
genuinely believe that she's never had sex.
Okay.
And I think she is completely asexual. I
you
don't
have
think there's
heard
a
about
sexual
these kids, eh?
Yeah, but how were they conceived?
Okay.
Scientifically.
Which would all be okay. if power to her. You
Yeah,
know?
but
I
do
mean,
not think she's
because
ever
I
had sex.
think-
You cannot have
Can I
had
go-
sex.
can I-
and still
Brendan, you're the-
move.
No,
You're
no, I
the
want to
guy.
plead the fifth on this one, you know?
Yeah.
Why do you know?
No, I don't. I can't say. My lawyers have told me not to go there. No, it is honestly like there's so much speculation about her love life forever. Yeah. And I mean, so she met Renee. And the one thing I would say is I mean, and it's complicated. Even if you read the official Georges Herbert Germain, René Angelil biography, which is super interesting. It's authorized, but he goes into some of these things, right? I mean, Maman Dion hit the roof.
Yeah.
At 18, when Renee's like, I'm going out with your daughter.
Yeah, well, no kidding.
Right.
Renee was like
because that's
42.
the fucked up thing, honestly. It's like, you know, he met her when she was 12, 10 to 12, whatever it was.
12.
But it's not like, okay, he saw her at 12 and then never saw her again and saw her at 20. He saw her every day of her life from when she was 12. How does an attraction develop?
Well, so the thing is...
That is fucked up. I'm sorry. It's fucked up.
Well, I mean, the one thing I would say, and it's a minefield, but is... I mean, I've talked to her. I mean, we're not friends, obviously. I mean, we're just lovers.
Colleagues.
This is the major revelation. This is how you know.
Okay, I'm out of the closet.
It's you,
You remember
Brendan.
when she said it wasn't a date?
Yeah.
It was a date. And boy, was it a date. Vegas is a great place.
Yeah. But just to wrap things up, my take on this is even if her representation of like normative love with her husband and like the children and the family is one thing, and then you look just slightly to the right and it's so queer. And it's so the way like her, because she's kind of a drag character. She loves to dress up as a man and always has these like more masculine costumes.
Right.
Yeah.
And like the how she would talk so much about having kids, but then even the ways she would have the kids. And
Right.
it's really non-conventional.
Well,
and it's
that's what I
totally
mean by queer.
sexless.
That's what I mean by
like
queer.
the straight illusion that she's presenting from
That's
talking
so
about wanting a
fascinating.
family and having the pretty stereotypically heteronormative family and love, but it's completely sexless.
Well, and also you have to say, and I mean, it's certainly just as a
Like who listens to Celine or even watches Celine
But
and gets
there's always
turned
been a gay-
A
on?
lot of people.
Well, but there's also been. Well, I don't know. I mean, I can't even.
Again, I'm concerned for these people if they're out
there is certainly. I was always under the impression, and you guys confirm or not, that in the gay community there was always a big Celine thing, right? Like,
right, but
no?
I mean, yes. I mean,
you
in
know
terms
what?
of her as like having a gay following.
well, that's what I
but
mean.
she's also
but I
someone
mean,
who's
so does
done
Madonna,
nothing-
and but Patsy Gallant, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there's
who's going to
some-
be our guest next week?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
She's
Patsy's
so
in here.
cool.
I know, she's amazing.
Love her.
But, Madonna was someone who really fought for the community, especially during the AIDS crisis. Celine has done nothing for the
She
queer
waved the flag.
community.
She waved the flag
She
2
did?
years ago in
Yeah,
Montreal.
when after everything has been
Everything.
said and done, when the AIDS crisis, when we moved past it, now she's like waving the flag, but she wasn't waving the flag in 1991.
Well, you know what? She was so busy fighting apartheid in South Africa that
She named her kid Nelson. That's what
Yes.
she was. Yeah, that's what she was doing. Thank you so much, Brendan.
Well, it was
Yes,
great.
this
Thanks
was
for the
amazing.
invitation.
And we'll look out. So the meaning of Celine is coming out on
Yeah.
the Gazette this
Yeah.
weekend.
Yes.
Okay.
So
And the
it
30
will all
days
be.
of Celine.
They'll all be, and the 30 days every day, and it will all. By the time that's the big feature, and in the 30 days, it will all be explained.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, Brendan.
Thank you.
Thank you.